Finish for the Rovers striker. Adrian Foster helped himself to a late consolation, but it was never going to be enough for a Torquay side who are now facing a real battle to avoid dropping through the third division trapdoor into the GM Vauxhall Conference.
United
Arrived at Torquay, heralded as the great hope who would revive the flagging fortunes of the club. The striker was seen as a good target man and took up his position as player-assistant manager. In recent months, Fashanu lost his goal-scoring form, and his managerial future was also under question after it was announced Neil Warnock was being brought in to assist manager Paul Compton.
The reasons are slightly muddied. I think it's a combination between us bringing Neil Warnock in as a consultant and the fact that in the afternoon Justin made a bid for the manager's job, which was turned down. And I think the two things combined, and he's just said he's on his bike.
A question now remains over Paul Compton's position, although Bateson insists Warnock is only being brought in to help for 2 weeks.
I have said recently that I have no confidence in him, which is probably a reverse of the norm. Because I haven't got confidence in the way things have been going at the moment. Who has? You'd have to be a lunatic. But I do believe that Paul can bring it around. I've had a private meeting with the players this morning to tell them, bring them up to date on what's happened, and their support for Paul is absolutely overwhelming. It's quite staggering. I thought there would be a little bit of a dissent there, but totally 100% behind him.
He refused to back me, so I think that's a good sign. The fact that every time a chairman gives a manager a vote of confidence, he goes down to the job centre the next day. So I'm very grateful that the chairman hasn't given me a vote of confidence, and I'm very happy to still be here as manager of Torquay United.
Well, a short time ago, Justin Fashanu explained to Natalie Corner his reasons for leaving Plainmoor.
When I started, it was to get back into football after having reconstruction of a knee injury and because of the revelations of my sexuality. I did that and I was happy with that. Then Paul asked me to become assistant manager, and at the beginning things were going well. I now no longer have the same confidence in Paul and the situation at Plainmoor, and rather than just carry on picking up my wages and going through the motions, I thought it was more honourable and truthful to say it's time for me to leave.
What has changed? Why has the situation changed?
Well, certain situations are happening at the football club. We're going through a time of change, and I thought that the solution to the problems we had wasn't the right solutions, and not because Neil Warnock is coming in. Don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that either Paul Compton and myself can do the job, or we can't. If we can't, then we go, and Neil comes in and he does a job permanently, because at the moment there needs to be some stability. There needs to be, in my opinion, the ability of giving the guys some confidence and a leader to follow. And if you're going to have an advisor coming in and then going again, well then it's great for a while and then it goes off again. It's not the right solution as far as I was concerned.
There are serious question marks tonight about the future of Plymouth Argyle manager Peter Shilton. He'll meet club directors at Home Park tomorrow and faces a fight for survival after a string of poor performances. It culminated in last night's 2-1 defeat at Torquay United in the Autoglass Trophy. Chairman Dan McCauley was very angry about Argyle's performance. He described it as an absolute disgrace to the supporters, the club and the city of Plymouth. Well, for Torquay, of course, it was a night to remember and a dream start for management consultant Neil Warnock, who only arrived at Plainmoor on Monday. Argyle needed just a draw to make it through to the next round of the competition. In a pulsating first half, they had several chances to make their early dominance count, but they went into the break with just this solitary goal to show for their efforts. The ever-lively Dwight Marshall latching onto a through ball from Warren Joyce before slipping it past Kevin Blackwell. It was a completely different story after the break, with a rejuvenated Torquay side showing the kind of commitment that's been missing from some recent third division matches. They bombarded the Argyle goal, and Paul Hall deservedly struck this 65th minute equaliser. Hall doesn't score many with his head, but he'll be pleased enough with this one, even if it was slightly fortuitous. And there was worse to follow for Argyle. The killer blow came 9 minutes from time, and ironically it was former Pilgrim Kevin Hodges who stooped low to head home another Aaron Davis cross. So a famous Torquay victory, and the club's new management team Paul Compton and Neil Warnock couldn't have wished for a better start.
football owes nothing to anybody, and I think that my players tonight, I say my players because I'm involved now, have made me very proud tonight because of the effort they've put in, and I think the crowd at Plainmoor was exceptionally noisy tonight, which they're going to need that in the next few weeks, and it just shows the players tonight what they can do, but they can only do that if 11 lads are committed, and tonight they were.
Lynn Rugby.
Glass trophy.
This was a game Plymouth badly needed to win. Peter Shilton's embattled side have been getting progressively worse all season after a promising start to the campaign. Torquay too needed something to boost their disastrous season. Argyle looked confident in the first period, this one of several squandered chances. Plymouth did eventually break the deadlock. The goal came on 24 minutes from Dwight Marshall. By this stage Plymouth were well on top but couldn't build on the lead. Then, as Torquay continued to press, on 65 minutes, Paul Hall got the equaliser from a well-taken free kick. 9 minutes from time and former Plymouth star Kevin Hodges netted the winner, a good win for Torquay by 2-1. On the final whistle, the Torquay players and their supporters at last had something to smile about. Their performance impressed consultant manager Neil Warnock.
It was a tremendous performance from start to finish regarding effort, and I think as the game went on, you also saw quite a bit of skill coming into it, so highly delighted.
And here are the fixtures for the second round of the Autoglass Trophy. Torquay travelled to West Bromwich Albion and Exeter entertain
Rotherham keeper Matt Clark. Torquay United's prospects of preserving their Football League status suffered another blow as Phil Clarkson's mishit shot gave Crewe a lead they never really looked like relinquishing. It came as no great surprise when Tony Naylor increased their lead midway through the second half. The one bright spot for United was another goal from Dwayne Darby, who's making a habit of being in the right place at the right time.
Well, Torquay's management team have already signed up a short-term replacement for Foster. Stockport County striker John Muir will be at Plainmoor until the end of the season and could play in tomorrow's Autoglass Trophy game at West Brom. Town in the
For Torquay, it was just not to be against West Brom, despite a gutsy display which so nearly produced the shock of the night. United took the lead with John Muir's looping header after just quarter of an hour, and they kept the lead until 4 minutes from time. So close to a famous win, but Torquay goalkeeper Kevin Blackmore tore his hamstring and hobbled from the field, leaving midfielder Adrian Foster to guard the net. Sadly for the Gulls, this was a turning point, and Kevin Donovan acted as the pivot, first leaving poor Foster little more than a spectator, and finishing off Torquay's brave efforts just 2 minutes later. Final score, West Brom 2, Torquay 1.
Hockey news now, and Isca's Graham Kohler will...
Argyle hit rock bottom at Cardiff on Saturday, where a bizarre opening goal, courtesy of United defender Tom Kelly, set Cardiff on the road to a slightly flattering victory. It wasn't until 10 minutes from time that the Welsh side really took control, Phil Stant's looping header making it 2-0. A minute later, Stant provided the cross for Nathan Blake to lash home Cardiff's third goal. And Torquay's misery was completed when Stant found acres of space to make it 4-0, a defeat which sent United to the foot of the Football League.
Support for that.
To try to entice crowds back to Plainmoor. Entry will cost £3 for adults and just £1 for children. On the field, Torquay went down 4-0 to Cardiff City and are now bottom of the Football League. It was a flattering scoreline for Cardiff, who took the lead after a mishit corner. Torquay failed to make the most of chances which could have brought them back into the game. Then Cardiff went 2 up after a Paul Miller cross was headed home by Phil Stant. It was a Stant cross as well which made Cardiff's third goal just a minute later. Substitute Nathan Blake beat the Gulls' young keeper Matthew Lowe. And Cardiff's fourth goal came from Stant again, dumping Torquay at the foot of the Football League. But Chairman Mike Bateson says it's down but not out.
Somebody's got to be bottom at some time during the season, and I'd rather we were bottom now than not at the end of the season. So we'll let Gillingham, Hereford, Northants, so one of the other sides take over towards the end of the season, and we'll climb to a nice mid-table position, buoyed on by our 4,000 plus crowds that we're going to get.
To try to halt the slide, there have been many new additions to the squad. Don O'Riordan has arrived as player coach, and Bateson says he's done all he can to ensure success.
Well, there's nothing I can do now. I mean, I've brought in Neil Warnock. I've made money available for new players, some of whom have arrived. Maybe odd one or two more to come in. Nothing else I can do is just sit there and watch with the rest of us.
Bateson's now trying to persuade Neil Warnock, the consultant, to stay on until the end of the season, but says he still has confidence in Paul Compton.
Well, one of the things people are forgetting is that Neil Warnock was Paul Compton's idea. Paul is, as I've said all season, is very much a trainee manager, and we see this as part of his ongoing training. Certainly it's rubbing off in that he's learnt an awful lot from Neil, and there's obviously a lot more to be learned.
United off the foot of the third division table in front of a bumper crowd down at Plainmoor.
Torquay United's experiment of reducing admission prices by half certainly proved a hit with the fans. More than 3,000 of them turned up at Plainmoor on Saturday, and they weren't disappointed as Torquay set about turning the form book upside down against high-riding York. Having dominated the first half, Torquay took the lead just after the break, thanks to a superb lob from left-back Tom Kelly. It was Kelly's first goal for United, but in terms of vision and precision, his strike wouldn't have looked out of place in the Premier Division. United might easily have added more goals, but the missed chances didn't seem to matter too much. A 1-0 win was enough to lift them off the bottom rung of the league ladder and to leave the fans feeling that the club could now climb out of trouble.
It's nice to be back off the bottom of the league, obviously, and a nice crowd, which is obviously to do with the prices. Hopefully we can keep it up a bit longer.
Torquay United were a little disappointed not to pick up a much-needed point at Chesterfield. But after looking the better side for much of the match, they suddenly found themselves under intense pressure. They managed to survive one prolonged goal-mouth scare, but they failed to prevent Chesterfield's Andy Morris from scoring what proved to be the decisive goal. Torquay still have a lot of work to do if they're to climb out of the Football League basement.
Next news to report.
Torquay United's bid to power themselves away from the relegation zone was left firmly on the launching pad at Plainmoor on Saturday, as Steve O'Shaughnessy propelled fellow strugglers Darlington into the lead. Torquay did virtually all the attacking after that, but despite all the pressure, they rarely looked like forcing an equaliser. And in the end, they paid the penalty for pushing forward when Darlington broke away to put the match beyond their reach with a second goal, this time from Steve Mardenborough.
Well, all three of our local sides are playing again over the next couple of days, and we'll have all the action and news for you here on West Country Live. Well, in rugby,
Torquay United also showed plenty of fighting spirit at Lincoln, where they shocked the home side by taking a 21st-minute lead when Adrian Foster turned in a Lee Barrow cross. Torquay held on to that advantage until 5 minutes before the break, when David Putnam's deep cross gave Neil Matthews the chance to head home the equaliser. Like Argyle's game, this match also had its share of controversy, notably when United keeper Kevin Blackwell was adjudged to have pushed Ian Barraclough. Barraclough then added insult to injustice by driving home the penalty. The penalty decision clearly didn't please Torquay's management consultant Neil Warnock, and he was even more incensed by an off-the-ball incident a few minutes later. But his comments didn't go down too well with match referee Brian Hill, and he was asked to leave the arena. But Warnock and Torquay had the last laugh as Lincoln failed to clear a Don O'Riordan free kick, and Mark Sale volleyed home the equaliser to give United a well-deserved point. And managed to put some daylight between themselves and the bottom of the table and to persuade management consultant Neil Warnock to stay on for at least another week. But they needed a penalty to set them on the road to victory against Halifax. Tom Kelly slotting home the spot kick after a foul on Mark Sale. Even then, Warnock's threat to leave if Torquay failed to win might have become a reality but for the agility of United keeper Kevin Blackwell. It needed a superb solo effort from Paul Trollope to finally settle Torquay's nerves with a win which lifted them to 18th place in the table.
you may have seen.
United had a surprise in store at Rochdale, where the experienced Wes Saunders was recalled a week ahead of schedule. After missing most of the season with knee ligament damage, Saunders marked his return with a goal. But in keeping with the wretched time he and the club have been experiencing, it was an own goal, and it turned out to be the only one of the afternoon.
Rescue as manager, and at lunchtime the club also lost their most talented player. 20-year-old winger Paul Hall completed his move to First Division Portsmouth. Although an initial fee of around £40,000 might disappoint some supporters, Torquay will receive double that amount if Hall makes 20 appearances for his new club, and there's also a 25% sell-on clause. Meanwhile, management consultant Neil Warnock has now officially taken charge of United's battle against third division relegation. Paul Compton's decision to step down as manager had been on the cards for several weeks. Now it's up to Warnock and player coach Don O'Riordan to guide United to safety. The Torquay managerial situation has been extremely confusing ever since the arrival of Warnock 2 months ago. The former Notts County boss came to Playmore as an unpaid management consultant, but effectively took charge of team affairs straight away. It was Paul Compton's own decision to invite Warnock to the club, and it paid an immediate dividend with a shock Autoglass Trophy victory over Devon rivals Plymouth Argyle. Warnock also set about rebuilding the Torquay squad by signing several new players, including Gary Chapman, Mark Sale and new player coach Don O'Riordan. But despite assurances that Compton was still in charge, some supporters weren't happy. An article in Torquay's unofficial fanzine was critical of his contribution and went on to question the strange managerial setup at the club.
Well, I'm not sorry to see him go. It's not a personal thing, but I never believed that the man was capable of doing the job, not at league level, perhaps at non-league level. But I also found it strange that Neil Warnock was here, you know, making all the decisions, and yet Paul Compton was taking a back seat. That can't be good for the club. If nobody's got the confidence to make him manager, and him and only him manager, then, you know, where do you draw the line?
So, with Torquay still facing a tough battle to avoid dropping out of the league, Compton has now decided it will be in the club's best interest if he quit as manager and reverted to his old job as youth development officer. But where does he think it all went wrong?
I think just bad luck. I think basically that was it. I think you can just boil it down to that, you know, with the major injury to Wes Saunders, obviously. Then Chrissy Mars later in the season. Then, obviously, I brought Kevin Hodges in from Plymouth as well, and he went down with a long-term injury. And, you know, when you've got three major experienced players in a young side going down with injuries like that, you know, it's very difficult to replace, especially when you're running a tight ship, which I was quite happy to do, but unfortunately it didn't work out for me.
I feel that he's done this, really, to try and assure the players that probably too many chiefs, not enough Indians sort of thing. Whereas, you know, he could have just kept his position as it is, but he felt he wanted to help the young lads now and look forward to next season for the youngsters. My aim is to help us steady the boat and make sure we stay in the league with Don O'Riordan and Paul Compton. And I'm not doing it for anything else, and you know, I can assure you that Neil Warnock at this moment in time is not after the job of manager at Torquay United.
Well, one other move to tell you about today, it came at Home Park, where Dwight Marshall...
Manager Paul Compton. He's admitted that his work with the first team was a total failure. The man now in charge is consultant Neil Warnock.
Paul Compton's announcement comes less than a year after his managerial appointment. He's not leaving the club, but is going back to his old job of youth development officer. He realises that this is a step backwards, a big blow to his career.
I'm very disappointed for myself, obviously, because everybody starts off in a new job wanting to do well. And I'd be a liar if I said I didn't want to take Torquay United up into Division 2.
Earlier this year, Paul Compton offered his resignation. Torquay chairman Mike Bateson turned it down. So why accept it now?
Yes, that's the burning question. Well, because we're near the bottom of the league at the moment. Paul is not, as it were, fighting to stay in the job, so therefore there's little point in continuing the pretense, really.
The club isn't afraid to admit that Compton's managerial venture was a flop. That's something he agrees with wholeheartedly.
Well, if you look at the position of the club, yes. I've never been one to hide away from responsibility, and if you look at the position, obviously to answer that question is yes.
The Gulls are currently sitting just off the bottom of the third division. The first team reins have now been handed to troubleshooter Neil Warnock, whose task is to keep Torquay in the Football League. He's got quite a reputation for working minor football miracles. He took Scarborough into the league and catapulted Notts County from the third to the first division.
I felt that I could put myself into some use by coming here and helping Torquay, and that's what I want to do, because I think in years to come I want Torquay to be able to thank me for helping them out.
And Neil Warnock denies that his arrival at Plainmoor has had anything to do with Paul Compton's resignation.
No, not at all. I mean, Paul brought me here, and all along I've always said I'll stay here as long as Paul Compton wants me to stay. And I asked Paul, when he told me that he was going to concentrate on the youth, if he wanted me to leave, and he said no. Obviously, he wants the club to continue its progress. And I'm quite happy to help out. I don't want his job, never have wanted his job.
Despite the current crisis, staff at Plainmoor won't contemplate becoming a non-league side. They've got 9 games to survive.
Come on, you Gulls, get some goals. Just say, I think that...
Torquay United produced another battling performance at Scunthorpe despite being behind after just 9 minutes when Graham Alexander's free kick was deflected home. Torquay defender Darren Moore used his considerable presence to conjure up an equaliser after keeper Mark Samways failed to hold Lee Barrow's throw. Former Torquay defender Matthew Elliott looked to have done his ex-teammates a considerable disservice with Scunthorpe's second goal midway through the second half. But United weren't to be outdone. The striker Mark Sale made the most of a fortunate rebound to lash home the equaliser to preserve a chink of daylight between Torquay and the bottom of the table.
Rugby, there was another...
Torquay might have had most of their chances in the first half, but they still managed to fall behind. Steve McGavin put Colchester ahead just 3 minutes before the break. In the second half, the Gulls' persistence paid off. An attempted clearance which rebounded off Lee Barrow put them level. From a corner, this close-range shot from Kevin Hodges made it 2-1. But United lost the 2 points they so desperately need just 5 minutes later. Steve Ball scored a stunning equaliser for Colchester from 25 yards. A disappointing draw for Torquay.
And don't forget, there's live football on West Country tonight at 7:20, the European Champions League game between Marseille and... Avoiding third division relegation were given a minor boost yesterday. Their match against Walsall ended in a 2-2 draw, as Kurt Parry reports.
In a match that needed a top performance from Torquay to help drag them from the relegation swamp, the start was ideal. Tom Kelly's corner after 6 minutes headed home superbly by fullback Lee Barrow, leaving Walsall's keeper Mark Gale hopelessly stranded. But after the half-time break, a mirror-image goal from Rob McDonnell cancelled out Torquay's lead. And it didn't look as though it was going to get much better, as shortly afterwards Wayne Clark was handed a golden opportunity, which he snatched up without any mistake at all. 2-1 to Walsall. But much to Torquay's credit, they came back immediately, and it was Darren Moore's diving header on the end of a Don O'Riordan free kick that earned them a well-deserved away point. But despite the travelling fans' jubilation at that goal, Torquay still find themselves languishing at the very foot of the Football League. But more goals like this one will certainly help their cause. Final score, Walsall 2, Torquay 2.
Well, that's just about it from this edition of the West Country Match. Whatever your allegiances, I hope you enjoyed our coverage of the Big Devon Derby. And don't forget that there's more Division 3 despite their splendid win at Shrewsbury.
Torquay United certainly didn't look like a side struggling at the foot of the table at Shrewsbury on Saturday. They were happy to take the game to their opponents in the first half, and it came as no great surprise when they went in front. Mark Sale's neat touch caused problems for Tommy Lynch, and Dwayne Darby capitalised on the defender's mistake to score his 11th goal of the season. Torquay found themselves under more pressure in the second half, but they coped pretty comfortably, and even managed to take the sending off of striker Mark Sale in their stride. Sale and Shrewsbury's Mark Williams were both given their marching orders after a touchline tussle, a decision which disappointed both managers but didn't entirely ruin Torquay's day. Well, Plymouth Argyle went into their match with Brighton knowing that the home fans hadn't quite forgiven them for losing to Exeter the previous...
From Plainmoor, Torquay United's fight for league survival suffering a major setback with a 2-1 home defeat by Lincoln, as Kurt Parry reports.
Well, once again, Torquay flattered to deceive. The dream start to such a vital match coming after just 2 minutes of play when 19-year-old Dwayne Darby superbly chipped stranded keeper Mike Pollitt for his 12th goal of the season. But almost predictably, having put themselves in such a good position, United immediately showed the usual lack of concentration in defence and allowed Matt Carmichael to equalise. Then, to make sure that United stayed at the bottom of the table, Ian Barraclough provided the cross for Paul Smith to head home. And sadly for Torquay, the drop is now looking more likely than not.
So a disappointing defeat for Torquay, who have 3 games left to avoid that big drop, and I've got a feeling it could all come down to a final day decider against Gillingham.
Of certainty for the first time in months. Having seen their side secure a place in the Football League for another season, club chairman Mike Bateson is already making plans to appoint a new player manager. He's expected to make an announcement within the next few days. Don O'Riordan has emerged as a clear favourite to succeed management consultant Neil Warnock, who accomplished his mission with a 1-0 win at Carlisle on Saturday.
Warnock, the saviour, completed his task of keeping the Gulls in the Football League one game ahead of schedule on Saturday, and although not the most convincing of wins against Carlisle, the travelling fans wouldn't have been too worried if the ball had crossed the line because of an act of God. In the end, nothing so dramatic as Dwayne Darby simply nudged the ball home to ensure his side's third division status next season. A fitting end to a very mediocre campaign, and one which the Torquay fans and players alike will be pleased to put behind them.
Vale at St James.
So, pick your bags and off you go. So, you know, you've just got to sit down and think what sort of future you want and what potential there is and weigh it all out. But I didn't have any intention of staying, and I'm not saying that I will be now. I'm not even saying that Mike wants me to stay. It's one of those situations where I think you've got to just wait until after the Gillingham game and then have a few chats and see which way the club's going.
But the chairman seems to favour a cheaper option of having a player coach who will also take over some managerial responsibilities.
I don't think it's penny pinching. In fact, I resemble that remark. It's not penny pinching, it's pure, simple economics. The club cannot afford to have a manager. I mean, I've said it before, we can't even really afford a full-time professional team, but we will somehow find the money for that. No, I'm convinced that the way we're going will be the right way.
Now that the Gulls have avoided relegation, Warnock believes the club could succeed.
I think there's the potential here. Is definitely to get into the second division, and I think that for the likes of Plymouth, I think they could be a Premier League club. What I've seen in the area now, I think both setups could go higher.
It's for that.
Another bumper crowd saw a match that 2 weeks ago looked like being decisive in the relegation battle. In the event, the result wasn't so important, and it was Gillingham who took a 19th-minute lead when Paul Baker was on hand at the far post. Departing management consultant Neil Warnock pulled no punches in his half-time team talk, and Torquay looked a far better side after the break. A cross from young substitute Scott Stamps led to a deserved equaliser. Lee Barrow's header only parried by Barrett. Foster on hand to force it home. It was another quality cross from one of Torquay's brightest prospects, and the finish showed Foster at his poaching best, his 13th goal of the season. After a season where they've had less than their fair share of fortune, the gods were smiling on Torquay twice in the closing stages. Firstly, referee Roger Gifford pointed to the penalty spot after Elliot Martin brought down Foster. The replay clearly shows that the trip happened just outside the area, but no complaints from Torquay, who enjoyed a second slice of luck moments later when Tom Kelly's unconvincing penalty eventually made its way across the line. So, a 2-1 victory for Torquay, and for the man who masterminded their end-of-season revival, it was an excellent note on which to leave the club.
It was a super second-half performance. We needed a bit of a roasting at half-time, but they responded in the right way, and I thought we deserved it at the death.
Looking back to your time at Torquay, are you pleased with the way things went?
Yes, I mean, the people and from the chairman downwards have been superb to me, and we've responded with the good crowds, and although we haven't had the best results at home, the pitch has not helped, and we rectify that. We've done well away from home. The supporters have been brilliant away from home, and I've only got good memories of the area. I love the area, and the potential is quite good now to go forward.
There was another controversial penalty at Home Park. Reading defender Adrian Williams and Argyle's Kevin Nugent both looked skywards as they...
A little over a week ago, it looked as if Torquay United and Gillingham might have been battling for their league survival on Saturday. But with the pressure off, it didn't seem to matter quite so much when Paul Baker gave the visitors an early lead. Torquay, watched by a bumper crowd of more than 4,500, had much the better of things after that, but they had to wait until 8 minutes from time to force an equaliser through substitute Adrian Foster. And Foster was instrumental in setting up Torquay's winner. He was floored by Elliot Martin. Tom Kelly scored from the penalty. He and his teammates were left to celebrate, ending what could so easily have been a disastrous season on a much happier note.
Meanwhile, Torquay chairman Mike Bateson has delayed an announcement about the club's new manager until later in the week. Player coach Don O'Riordan is still the hot favourite.